Hope you're having a good day and a good week. Last week at church, we talked about, we're in a series, first of all, called Vital Christianity, and we talked about life's two halves. And I think this is a really important message because it goes to the point of how we're going to live this life and to live it on purpose for God and to have the most impact that we can possibly have. And a lot of times in our earlier years, those decisions that we make truly impact and have consequences to the second half of our lives. So I talked about the average life expectancy here in the United States is 79, 80 years old. So, you know, if you're under 40 and under, you're in your first half. You're 40 and over, you're in your second half. And we just talked about that. And in the first half of life, I wanted to emphasize 4 investments that we should look to make if we want to set ourselves up the best way possible. And when I say that, I'm talking about, yeah, it's important to have financial security, things like that, but I'm talking about how God can get the most out of our lives. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about when I say to make investments that will help the last half of our lives be the best half of our lives. And so the 4 investments are finances, health, relationships, and purpose and character. So the first thing is we talked about finances, and you know, there's some great statistics and examples of compound interest. If you can just learn how to save your money, if you start when you're 20 years old and you just put away a couple $100 a month, that you'll be a millionaire by the time you retire. And, you know, so as a 20-year-old though, that's like the last thing that we think about. And it was interesting because there was a study done on baby boomers, and it showed that only 15% of baby boomers have actually invested well so that they don't have to worry about their finances in their second half. There was another 35% that did okay, you know, so they're going to be all right in the second half, but not set up the best way possible. But that leaves another 50% of baby boomers that are in a retirement crisis because they just didn't make good, wise financial decisions. They weren't planning for the future. They lived as if they were going to get to 50 and that was it. And now, obviously, they're past that age and getting towards retirement and yet can't retire. So and that prevents them from doing a lot of things that God would want them to do. So I want us to get us when we're young, you know, 20 years old, to think about those decisions. And we teach, the Bible teaches a 10-10-80 principle. So the first 10% we talk about giving back to God. That's called a tithe in Scripture. The second 10% you pay to yourself, which is your savings, and then you live off the rest, the 80%. And if you follow this, it will truly change your life. And it will both allow you to have an emergency fund built up here and now, right? So the things that happen now you're prepared for, but it also helps you to think about the future and make sure you're putting away money for your retirement. And it's very, very doable. If you start young, if you make these habits in your life, especially the giving and the savings, those 2 things, if you just simply do it week in, week out, you don't miss it. And you're becoming a wise steward is what you're doing. So I encourage you to set yourself up better for the second half of life. And then we quickly talked about our health, because to me it's obvious, but it's hard to do. I get that. But if you don't get your health right in the first half, I mean, I've seen plenty of 50, 60-year-olds that are like, geez, I wish I, you know, could get in better shape now. And it's just so much harder when you're, you know, 50, 60 years old to get in shape. So, you know, we talked about good sleep patterns, make sure you get enough sleep, your fitness and your nutrition, you know, and we know in our heads what to do. It's just a matter of, again, forming good, healthy habits. So I encourage you to make the changes that are necessary to do so. And then we talked about the importance of relationships. And relationships are the people that are going to be with you, not only now, but in those later years. And it's so important to have good people in your life. And I find that, especially for young married couples, it's very hard when you start having children to invest in your friendships. And so I want to encourage people to really carve that out and to do whatever you can do to make sure you have those good relationships and utilize each other to help each other out in those early years, because it's obviously a lot of stress on young families. But it's so important to invest in good people in your life. And then lastly, we talked about your purpose and your character. You know, the studies show that, you know, between ages 20 and 40, you're discovering who you are, you're discovering your gifts, your passions, the things that you love to do, what you're good at. But then when you get between 40 and 60 is like that just the place where you find your groove and you're living out your purpose and you're living out your character because you know who you are and you know what your values are. And so you should be able to just do some great kingdom work in those years. And then in the 60 to 80 or whatever afterwards, that's just a great opportunity to invest in others. And I'll talk about that in a second. So actually, let's just go into it right now. So in the second half, basically, God is saying, if you plant these seeds and invest wisely in the first half, you should reap the benefits of that in the second half. And unfortunately, I see so many people that just don't able to reap the benefits. So the very first thing I said is just focus on living out who you've become. You've worked hard at developing your character. You've worked hard at discovering your purpose. Now live it out. You know, there's just too many people that are just miserable and grumpy and, you know, not fun to be around, you know. And I shared a funny example from, I go to the gym and it's like an old man's club sometimes, you know, and I just have to hear in the locker room the stories of these guys, and all they talk about is that next medical appointment and woe is me and oh my gosh. And you hear things you just never want to hear and you see things you never want to see. It's kind of funny, but it's also kind of sad. And, you know, there's nothing more for me anyways. What I want to see people, I want to see people continually living it out and making a difference with their lives. So that leads me to the next point is invest in others. You've lived a life, whether good, bad, and differently, you've lived a life, you have experiences, and give back. Be a mentor and share your life experiences, share your passions, share your gifts, share all the things you've learned with the next generation and pour into them. There's plenty of opportunities to do that, and that is a life well lived when you can invest in other people. And then lastly, just have fun. You know, if you work those years and you invested wisely, you should have, you know, you don't need a bigger house anymore. You don't need more cars. You don't need any of these things. Go and live and have fun. Try new things. And enjoy all the things that you've done in the first half. And that should lead to the second half of your life being the best part of your life. All right, so enjoy the rest of this week. We'll see you Sunday, and invest wisely.